Sell me these roses in Arabic, and I'll pay you $100,000, the millionaire mocked, then froze in shock. The afternoon sun hung low over the busy market street, painting everything in gold. Vendors called out to passers-by. Children darted between stalls, and the air was filled with the scent of spices and freshly baked bread. Among the noise and laughter stood a young flower seller named Amal, her hands stained with the color of roses. Her small wooden cart was old and chipped, but every bouquet she arranged looked like a piece of art. She was only 24, yet life had already tested her more than most. Her father had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving her to care for her ill mother and younger brother. Every day, she stood under the scorching sun or cold rain, selling flowers to strangers who rarely looked her in the eye. But Amal never complained. To her, every rose she sold was another meal for her family, another day her brother could stay in school, another moment of hope. That day, a black luxury car pulled up near her stall, gleaming under the light. The door opened, and out stepped a man dressed in an expensive suit. He looked out of place in the crowded street, a man who clearly had everything. The people around began whispering his name, Youssef Al-Karim, one of the richest businessmen in the city. He was known for his sharp tongue and ruthless nature, the kind of man who enjoyed reminding others how far above them he stood. Youssef walked toward Amal's stand with a smirk tugging at his lips. "How much for the roses?" he asked, his tone more playful than kind. Amal looked up, surprised, and smiled softly. $10 for a dozen, sir." Youssef chuckled and leaned closer, his voice dripping with arrogance. $10? For these. He picked up a rose, twirling it between his fingers. "Tell you what, young lady, if you can sell me these roses in Arabic, I'll give you $100,000. The market went silent. People stopped what they were doing, staring in disbelief. They thought it was a joke, a cruel one. Everyone knew that Amal wasn't fluent in Arabic. Her father had been a refugee, and though he taught her a few words, she had grown up speaking another language. Youssef knew that too. He'd seen her before on this street, had even mocked her accent once when she tried greeting him politely. This was his way of humiliating her again. Amal froze, her cheeks burning as the crowd began to murmur. A few people laughed quietly, but instead of lowering her eyes, she straightened her back. There was something fierce in her gaze now. "In Arabic, sir," she repeated softly. "Yes," Youssef smirked. "If you can truly sell them to me, in my language, I'll pay you $100,000. Right now." She looked down at her roses, then back at him. "Very well," she said. And then, with a deep breath, she began. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, the words grew stronger, warmer. She described the roses not just as flowers, but as living symbols, Warda al-Hayat, the roses of life. She spoke of how each petal carried the scent of hope, how their thorns reminded people that beauty could still bloom from pain. She spoke in Arabic, broken at times, accented, but filled with sincerity that made every syllable land with power. The crowd grew still. Even the wind seemed to pause. And then, as she held out the roses to Youssef, her eyes glistening, she said in perfect Arabic, "Buy them not with your money, sir, but with your heart. For even the richest man in the world cannot afford the fragrance of kindness." Youssef's smile faded. Something inside him shifted. The laughter died in his throat. He hadn't expected her to know those words. They were the same ones his mother used to tell him when he was a boy selling roses with her in the streets, long before he became rich. He hadn't heard them in decades. The sound of them cracked something open inside him that all his wealth could never repair. For the first time in years, Youssef was silent. Truly silent. The arrogance melted from his face as his eyes filled with emotion he couldn't hide. Slowly, he reached for his wallet, not to mock but to pay. He pulled out a checkbook and scribbled a figure, his hand shaking slightly as he handed her the check. "You've earned this," he said softly, "and more." Amal looked down and gasped. It was made out for $100,000. "Sir, I can't take this," she stammered, but Youssef shook his head. "You already have. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten long ago. That money means nothing if you've lost your humanity." He then looked at the roses still on her card. "Give me all of them," he added. "Every single one." Word spread quickly across the market. The arrogant millionaire who had come to mock had left humbled and quiet, his arms full of roses bought not with pride, but gratitude. Amal stood there, tears streaming down her face, clutching the check that would change her life forever. But it wasn't the money that made her cry. It was the validation. For the first time, someone had seen her worth. That evening, Amal returned home, her mother weeping with joy as she told her what happened. She used the money to open her own flower shop, a place she named Wardat Al Hayat, the Rose of Life. And every time a poor child came to her door, she gave them flour for free, reminding them that kindness and dignity cost nothing but mean everything to AS for Youssef. He visited her shop 1 year later, humbler, changed. He thanked her again and quietly donated to local schools in her name, saying she had taught him more in one conversation than life ever had. Sparkle's inspiring message: never underestimate someone because of where they stand or what language they speak. True worth isn't measured by wealth, power, or perfection. It's measured by heart, courage, and the ability to speak kindness even when others mock you.